My beloved Atari 8-bit home computer line is finally getting the mini treatment in the form of the 400 Mini, coming from Retro Games and PLAION in just a few weeks here in March 2024. And just in case you think this doesn't necessarily apply to you, you're not interested, it's not a big deal, I'm going to tell you why it is a big deal, both for retro game fans and Atari fans, and I'll run it down right after this.
This video brought to you in part by Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions. This exciting and heartwarming coming-of-age Gen X novel is available now. Check the link for more info.
Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John and I am a Gen X Grown Up. Thanks for clicking on this video. So yeah, the 400 Mini is coming our way in a few weeks. And I saw so many headlines that said, you know, little known or computer you've never heard of or computer nobody knows what it is getting the mini treatment. And that hurt my heart a little bit because it's probably true that fewer people are aware of the Atari 8-bit computer line. I mean, maybe you were, digging for cartridges and you found these little tiny ones and went, what the heck is that for? Well, this is an Atari 8-bit computer cartridge, of which I have a giant stack of them because I love the Atari 8-bit computer line. Look, you've seen me talk about the Atari 2600 a lot here on Gen X Grown Up, but if you ran back and did like my time card of my youth, every hour I spent on the 2600, I probably spent 3 hours with my Atari 800, my 800 XL, my 130 XE, my 1200 XL. I loved that computer line for a lot of reasons. And there are things that if you know about the Atari 8-bit, then you know why this is a very exciting thing to be coming to the mainstream and coming to the forefront. If you don't, I will explain it in a second because there's a lot there that you probably don't know about that is waiting for you to discover. First, let me talk about the nuts and bolts. So the 400 Mini is a 50% scale size of the Atari 400 home computer. March 28th, it's going to be available, $120. It has all the features you'd see of a modern emulation box, adjustable aspect ratio, CRT filters, rewind, save states, and stuff like that. And you probably remember we saw like the A500 Mini and the C64 Mini, things like that in these size, the keyboard doesn't work. It's just for looks, which fittingly, if you had the original Atari 400, the keyboard barely worked on it. It has this membrane keyboard like a really old calculator or something. It's really mushy and hard to type with. My best friend when I was growing up had the 400 when I had the 800, and he bought the aftermarket keyboard to make it work properly. So, because really, if you want to play Zork or some text adventure, I mean, forget about typing on that keyboard. So it's okay that this keyboard probably doesn't work. And I got to wondering, well, how are we going to handle a lot of the games? Like we saw things like Miner 2049er in the trailer is going to be included with this, which required buttons on the keyboard, not just the option select and start, but also like 1, 2, 3, 4 to go with the elevators later and later levels. And then I noticed that the stick that comes with this, called the THECXSTICK, is going to be, it's USB joystick, but it's an 8-button stick. So I can only imagine that console functions like start, option, reset, and maybe even some keyboard functions through emulation are going to be mapped to that, or maybe it's going to require you to have a keyboard. But all of that is secondary to why I am so excited that this is coming to the fore now. Now, you don't need the 400 Mini to play Atari 8-bit computer games. There's spectacular emulation in the form of Altera and Altera 64, a nice software package you can use. The original disk images or cartridge images are freely available all over the place to download and play. But sometimes it takes a release of something like this into the public to bring it to the fore of our consciousness. And any excuse to talk about the Atari 8-bit is fine for me, but the reason I think it's very interesting for you, if you're unaware of the Atari 8-bit, is at a time when the 2600 was dying off and we were entering the North American video game crash, the Atari 8-bit computer line was doing fine because it was a home computer. And while Atari did continue to make arcade game ports, sure, there's Asteroids and there's Centipede and there's Donkey Kong and things like that. But what the Atari 2600 line never figured out, and what the Nintendo line figured out when it launched in '85, was that now that we have more computing power, we can have much larger games with more depth, more involvement, more complexity, because you have a keyboard, you have a disk space to store stuff. There are so many games that never saw the light of day outside of either just the Atari 8-bit or the Atari 8-bit maybe and the C64, and that was it. So if you started your video gaming journey with the NES in '85 and never rewound any maybe you rewound just, back to the Atari, but didn't look at anything in the middle that happened during the mid-'80s. The Atari 8-bit is going to bring a lot of those games to you. Now again, you could play them yourself right now, but the 400 Mini brings a great reason to explore these things because it allows not only to play the 25 included games, but you can put your own disk images on a USB stick and plug them in. Look, I'm preparing a video where I'm going to recommend a bunch of great titles that were only on these home computers and nowhere else. And I'm working on that video now. I'll get it to you in a week or so, in a few days, in anticipation of the 400 Mini. But I anticipate that if this console, if this mini computer is half as good as the things that PLAION has produced in the past, the other minis and things like that, then I anticipate I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm going to, of course, have a review for you. Of course, I'm going to talk about the games you can put on it, how to expand it, that sort of thing. It's pretty drop dead simple, I'm sure. But more importantly, I am excited that there is a reason for people to now go back and go, well, wait a minute. They're releasing this mini computer that I've never heard of. Why should I care? If you spend a little time with these games, you're going to see why you care. And I'm almost envious of you watching if you aren't aware of the kind of cool games that were on these early to mid 80s home computers. They're so good, and they're so much better than what people think of when they think of Atari, the Atari 2600. It's not that blocky world. It's a much more high resolution. It's a much more in-depth, much more storage space. The flicker stuff is gone. And it was really companies like Synapse and Broderbund and Epix and people like that that said, yeah, you can do just little Twitch high score games, or you can do big sweeping adventures, cool platformers you haven't seen before with complexity that wouldn't work in an arcade, but are perfect for playing at home. Man, I am so looking forward to this thing. Definitely we're going to get one here at GenXGrownUp. Please let me know down below whether or not you know of the Atari 8-bit computer. It's very similar to the 5200, of course. Or if you aren't aware, and whether or not you're interested or excited in seeing what you may have missed out on, because I am looking forward to bringing it to you and showing it to you. In the meantime, I will throw some links here and here to some other videos I've done about the Atari 8-bit way in the past that I didn't know I'd get a chance to talk about it again here in this channel, and here we are. Thanks so much for checking out this quick video, and I can't wait to talk to you again and play some Atari 8-bit very soon. Bye-bye.